Growing up in the 2000s meant one thing: great television. Growing up as a child, watching some of the best shows on human history on Nickelodeon was definitely a blessing. Whether it was shows like Danny Phantom, The Fairly Odd Parents, SpongeBob, Rugrats, the list just goes on and on. Nickelodeon was constantly dropping bangers on their network. The best part about all this wasn't the fact that these were outstanding TV shows. It was the fact that we also grew up in a period where every single movie/show got a video game adaptation that was released not long after it had released. Now, you can't go and make a video game for damn near every TV show because there's a lot of Nickelodeon shows out there. So what's the next best option? Oh, I know. Put all those characters combined into one game. Now, hear me out. This sounds a little bizarre and a little crazy, but Nickelodeon found a way to get it done. Starting all the way back in 2000 with their very first game titled Nicktoons Racing. In here, it was released on Game Boy Color in 2000, and another abridged version was released for the Game Boy Advance in 2002, and eventually found its way onto the original PlayStation console. This game absolutely blew up, and rightfully so. It had a lot of up-and-coming characters from the 90s cartoons on Nickelodeon, as well as some new ones coming from the 2000s. This included Cat Dog, Rugrats, SpongeBob, Hey Arnold, and with this game absolutely blowing up, it was obvious that another game needed to be in development right away, and soon enough it felt like every single year we were getting a brand new Nicktoons game, except having all the Nicktoons characters in it, and a release as Nicktoons Racing, Nicktoons Party Blast, the list goes on. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Today, I'm going to play every single Nicktoons game out there and seeing which ones really are the best ones and ranking them. Now, I am going to go in order in terms of release dates by the years, and I will only be playing the games that were on mainline consoles. Any games that were the point, drag, click PC games or any handheld games are not going to be on this list. I do apologize, but I'm going to be talking about the ones that are mainly on the consoles. So we got plenty to look after, so let's jump right into it. Now, the first ever Nicktoons game that released on a mainline console was Nicktoons Racing, which I had mentioned earlier. And this was a game where you could play as any Nicktoons character in a Mario Kart type environment where you just go around racing with your own little go-karts, racing with your own characters, and going up against various other Nicktoons characters. The premise of the game is very simple and basic and straightforward. You literally just play as whatever character in these really wacky maps. Go through here, you can get obstacles to throw at people. It's basically just Mario Kart, but with the original Nicktoons games. The only problem with this game is it's really freaking old. It came out in 2002, and it was on the original PlayStation console. I'm not saying there wasn't a lot of effort put into it, but look at the source material that they had back then on the technology. It obviously doesn't hold up very well to this day, and it wouldn't necessarily be a fun game to play to this day unless you played it growing up and feel a sense of nostalgia playing it, which I can understand that. I didn't grow up playing this game, so I can't really speak for the rest of the people that enjoy it. It looks like a decent and fun game, but in all honesty, I'd rather just be playing Mario Kart, and most people don't have original PlayStation consoles. I mean, I don't. I had to find an emulator just to play this game. So, but does this mean that it's a bad game? No, absolutely not. This is actually looking like a very enjoyable game that at the time that it's released, I could see where a lot of people actually had a very fun time playing it. And it got some pretty decent reviews online. It got a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, which is really the only review that I could find, but that's a pretty damn good score considering this game and what it is. Fortunately, at the time of its release, it really was at the peak of, cartoons, so they didn't have too many characters to play as. You really only had like 6 options to play for characters, and some of them you probably are going to remember to this day, like Cat Dog, the Wild Thornberries, stuff like that. But this is still a very solid game, and I give it a C ranking.
Now, my
Don't
goal
hate
is
me for that.
obviously
Don't,
not to hate on anybody's game. I enjoyed growing up. I'm just here to give you my opinion on it, and I really thought this game could have been just a little bit more than what we actually got, but it's not bad for what it's worth. But moving on to the next one. This next Nicktoons game kind of follows the same pattern as the older one as a multiplayer family game. However, this one is a party-based game, which is literally called Nicktoons Party Blast. In this game, you can play as various different Nicktoons characters, up to 4 at a time, with your friends, with your family, whoever the hell you want to play with, and it's various party modes and games that you can play. This game, much like the other one, is very eerily similar to another Mario game. The other one was Mario Kart. This one is more or less of Mario Party. However, This game is, I don't know how to put this to you. This game is actually trash. It is very poorly done. I mean, just look at these character models up here. What the hell is this? This doesn't even remotely resemble anything of Nicktoons characters. It's like a half-assed version of them. In this game, you're only set in various different environments from many different Nicktoons games, but it's just so, I don't know, something about it is just so ugly that it doesn't really feel like there was a lot of production design time put into here. It really feel like the game was pretty much just rushed and put together because it had a deadline to achieve. Going into this game, I had never played it growing up, and I've seen a lot of really negative reviews for this game, which were some of the lowest I have ever seen for a video game in my life, and I didn't believe any of them. I was like, there's no way this game is actually as bad as everybody says it is, right? No, I was freaking wrong, because this game is just flat out terrible. Like I said, the designs are incredibly ugly. The icons are disgusting, and every single party map that you go to is just somehow worse than the last one. Like, what the hell even is this? Is this supposed to be like a diner or something? If you're unfamiliar with any of the Nicktoons games, which I don't know why you'd be playing this game if you were, you're going to be very confused and very mortified as to what you're seeing in here. The controls for this game, jeez, oh my gosh, these are some of the worst controls I have ever felt in my life. It feels like whenever you're trying to move your character, like you're literally drunk driving and you can't control hardly anything. Not to mention, in this game, there are random objects and random things thrown at you that impact you and throw you off balance in here, and it's supposed to be kind of like a, oh no, I gotta restart. No, it's just freaking annoying. And of course, much like other party games, you could play up to 4 players, assuming you have 4 people that are desperate enough and bored enough to want to do anything different with their life compared to whatever they could be doing, and say, yeah, screw it, you know what, we'll go play this game with you, don't worry, buddy. But even then, boy, do you have to have some very, very dedicated friends to want to go through the same misery and torture that you're going through and playing what is known as Nicktoons Party Blast. To be honest with you, this is a game that you should not even approach whatsoever with a 10-foot pole. You should not buy this game. For some reason, this game is crazy expensive online, and I can't figure out why. I'm guessing because it's so rare that they may have discontinued this game a lot earlier than a much other games that have failed out there, but I would not waste your money whatsoever on this game. While doing some research for it, I was absolutely planning on buying this game until I saw the absurd prices and the negative reviews, and it just didn't add up to the point to where I just found an emulator to play this game, and I have absolutely no regrets from that. If I would have paid $100 for this game and I started playing it and it's this level of garbage, I'd be very, very pissed. Not to mention that this is just one of those games that I can't defend you if you come out and say this was one of your favorite childhood games of all time. I am absolutely sorry, but I'm not going to apologize for shitting on this game for whenever this game did nothing but try to shit on me the entirety of me trying to play it. It is just absolutely that horrible. Luckily, Nickelodeon did fix their mistake later on down the road whenever they released SpongeBob Lights Camera Pants, which is a very, very similar concept to this game. It's a party-based game, but it's a hell of a lot better than this one. I recommend you play that one over this one. I recommend you watch paint dry before you even bother buying this game and playing it. I really feel bad all I'm doing is shitting on this game, and I really do need to find something positive to say about it moving forward, and it's very difficult to find something positive to say. I guess the only positive I could say is that it's Nicktoons, and I really, really do like the Nicktoons characters, and I think they do a decent God, I will say that some of the games are kind of creative, like this one right here, where you're basically just trying to knock each other off of a platform, but just notice how slow the movements are in here. It just feels like I'm walking on ice with absolutely no skates. It's just so hard to control these characters, and your character will randomly fall off a cliff, he'll randomly do a 360, and you didn't even tell him to. It's just so annoying, oh my gosh. And I kind of somewhat enjoyed this basketball one. I'd say this was probably the funnest one of them all because I guess I'm just a basketball fan and I like the sport, but that would really be the only excuse for anything that I like about this game. Seriously though, all in all guys, the reviews for this game are 100% accurate.
do not play this game. Please, please do not waste your money. Please don't spend any more than $10 for this game. This game is really on sale online for over $100, and that is just absolutely ridiculous. That's highway robbery. Just avoid the game, and I'm moving on to the next one. I'm done with this game. Now, I will say this next game is a very, very intriguing one, and it is one that introduced me to an accessory to a PlayStation 2 console that I never knew existed. This next game is titled Nicktoons Movin, and do you notice anything about this cover, anything really stand out to you? Oh yeah, I'll help you right here. The PlayStation 2 iToy camera. Now, if you're anybody like me and have absolutely no idea what this camera is, let me clue you in. This was basically like the Xbox Kinect almost a whole decade before the Kinect actually came out. It had a very short lifespan in the early 2000s, and it was basically a way to just play the video game without a controller. Like, you, the people, being the controller. And Nicktoons Movin actually decided to make a game based off of this. Now, unfortunately, while doing research for this game, I was pretty much already in development like right now, and I didn't have a camera on access, so I ended up just borrowing some footage online of somebody else playing the game. So credit to Much Games for putting this video out on the internet, and this is going to be him that you see in the background in the SpongeBob costume of this game. Shout out to him. Go watch his video. Leave his link in the description if you want to check out his. But I got to say that this game is wildly different than any other Nicktoons game you could play. I didn't even know the iCam even existed for the PlayStation 2. And then whenever they released this game, it came out to some pretty freaking solid reviews. And I mean, it's very different from what we've gotten in recent years, but it's actually a very fun game. I wouldn't really consider it a party game, more or less just like a free game. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's actually pretty cool. You could play as bowling right here, like what you're seeing Butch playing, and it's pretty unique and pretty cool. You being the controller for your own video games is one of the coolest feelings out there. I know the Xbox Kinect was pretty cool, and I know that came out, a good 10 years later, and we're kind of used to it, but back in the days of the early 2000s, this was brand new. They had never done anything like this before, and I'd imagine it was pretty fun. I truly wish that I would have ordered this damn camera and I could have done this myself, because this just looks like a blast, but I didn't. I'm fucking ugh. It says Nicktoons characters, but it kind of resolves basically around SpongeBob, which is not a problem whatsoever because SpongeBob was easily the most popular Nickelodeon character at the time. But look at this. Look how cool this concept is. You're the one over here grabbing the ingredients for SpongeBob to be making his Krabby Patties. Like, this has never been done before at the time of this. And I'm sorry if I sound like I'm glazing this game, but it's truly an amazing concept for something that at late 2000s, especially considering how bold and amazing this move was. I mean, this had never been done before, and Nickelodeon kind of gambled a little bit when coming out with this, and it absolutely paid off. This video game made a lot of different sales, and like I said, had some pretty damn good reviews online, and compared to the other party game that released, this game is genuinely fun, and you don't even need a controller to enjoy your time. Yeah, take that, Nicktoons Party Adventure. Now, I can't tell you from experience of playing this game whether or not it's buggy, but I do know from experience of owning an Xbox Kinect that not all the time does the camera actually pick up your movements, and I could tell that that's kind of a problem here in this game with what Much is doing. Sometimes he's moving to the left like you see right here, and it's responsive, but there's other times where you can clearly see he's moving in the opposite direction, and the camera is just not picking up on it just like that. Now, I don't think that that's a big issue for this game. I know it was for later on Xbox games, but in all honesty, I think this is a really good concept, and it can be very annoying whenever you're obviously telling it to go in this direction, and it's going in a whole opposite direction, and that's kind of why the Xbox Kinect failed, and the iCam for the PlayStation didn't last too long. So any of the games that you got, you pretty much had to enjoy them while they were here because they didn't last a long time. Now, my ranking for this game obviously is that it comes solely based off of what I'm seeing on the internet, of what other people are saying of this game. So I'm going to give this game a B tier ranking for trying something completely different, and it looks like for the most part absolutely succeeding at that. It's very rare that you see video game consoles take such bold and drastic
fantastic moves, and it actually pays off for them. Unfortunately, there's not another Nicktoons game that has the iCam, and obviously there wasn't anything really close to what the Xbox Kinect, because a lot of Nicktoons games didn't release on the Xbox 360. The closest we're going to get to this from here on out is any of the Nintendo Wii games. Of course, as you know, you are basically the controller for every Wii game that you play. But unfortunately, this is the only Nicktoons game that came out on the iCam. But moving forward, we have a lot of other games coming out that were really, really solid. Now, this next Nicktoons game kicks off a brand new set of games where basically all the Nicktoons characters unite. Every single one of them obviously isn't called Nicktoons Unite, but in their own different way, they are all basically the Nicktoons characters coming together to stop a force. The first game of this list is going to be called Nicktoons Unite, which released sometime in 2005, and it was a wildly different game compared to the other ones. Every other Nicktoons game up until this point was basically a party-style game that you'd play with your friends just to have a good time. This one took more of a serious concept, still had 4-player multiplayer modes you could still play with your friends, but it took on something completely different. Instead of a party environment game, it's more of an action-based game. So the premise of this game is that it starts off with SpongeBob's world being taken over with a bunch of people getting kidnapped and sucked into this giant rope. Goddard finds SpongeBob and brings him to the portal, which basically leads into Jimmy Neutron's lair, and we're introduced to our 4 main characters of this game. You got Jimmy Neutron, Danny Phantom, Timmy Turner, and of course SpongeBob, which a lot of people consider as the main line character of this game. Jimmy goes on to explain to them that all 4 villains from each of their series come together to take on some gigantic force to take over the world and basically become, emperors of the world. Somewhat a very basic, similar kids cartoon concept. Not long after that's introduced, we are jumped quickly into the game, and upon playing this game, you could tell it is wildly different than the other ones out there. Of course, it's up to 4-player multiplayer mode, and these are the only 4 characters you could play as, but it's set in an open world environment compared to many of the other party games kind of being like level-based. This is a very different level-based game, but you feel a little bit more free, a little bit more explorative. And each character has their own health bar in the bottom left corner. Each character has their own special abilities. The combats in this game is pretty basic and straightforward. But like I said, it is wildly different compared to the other ones because not only does this one base around a story, it's more action-filled and it's really based around just 4 characters. I would also like to mention that this is also the very first Nicktoons game that contains these characters but also is able to use their own powers. You see, obviously Danny Phantom is a ghost, Jimmy Neutron is a genius, Timmy Turner has the odd parents, and SpongeBob was just SpongeBob. But we've never had a game where we got to play as Danny, use his combat, use his ghost skills. Never got a game where we got to play as Jimmy, use his genius technology that he invents, or Timmy Turner with the help of his Fairly Odd Parents to get him through. And I truly believe that this is exploited in probably the best way possible. Each character, like I said, is different amongst themselves when in terms of costumes and battle movements, but it does really well with the game. I mean, obviously, look, the combat isn't the best, and this is still a children's game, so you gotta take it for what it's worth. But I will say that I think they dive into each character's different personalities in a very unique way. And the game does a very good job exploiting the villains of each world and each show, and I think it also does a pretty good design when it comes to the missions and the environments of which each character comes from. This is Danny Phantom's world, and obviously they got Vlad done pretty damn well, and as they dive into every other character's world, it's done really nice, like compared to the other games at least. Not to mention, we really don't see these characters get together in their own shows. Like, you're not going to see Danny Phantom popping up in SpongeBob's world. You're not going to see Jimmy Neutron popping up in Danny Phantom's world. The only crossover that we really ever had was Jimmy Timmy Power Hour. That's pretty much it. These other cartoons never crossed over with each other, so it is nice to see them all in a video game to see how they would react to different situations and also react to different villains. Plus, the voice acting is done remarkably well. They were able to get every single voice actor from the mainline shows to come into this game and put their own voice lines. Now, I'm not going to say that's rare, but that's also a really positive impact that it puts for the game. And it really does bring a lot of joy in the cartoon actually to the video game world. So, thumbs up for them on that one. Now, I have done a lot of good talk about this game, and I haven't really gotten to any of its quirks because every good video game has its quirks. One thing is that for some reason the game does not have
any background audio whatsoever. What I mean by that is usually there is a soundtrack that is made just for the game itself and is played typically in the background of levels. This game has none of that, so all you hear is the action sounds, the grunting of the characters, and just ambiance of whatever room you're in. Maybe I misspoke a little bit too much about that because it's not all the time there's no background noise, but it's enough to become a problem. I hate whenever I'm playing a video game with absolutely no music in the background, or if there is any, it's very vague and you could barely hear it. That just brings more fun to the game whenever each game has a better soundtrack to go along with it. Fun levels need fun music to go along with it. So that just kind of ruins the enthusiasm and fun for the game just a little bit, but not enough for it to become a problem. Another big issue with this game is that it kind of feels like the controls are going against you, much like in Nick Party Blast. Whenever you're going left or you're going right, it feels like you have to put everything in your might to move in that general direction. I don't know if that's just a mistake on their part or if they intentionally did that to put more effort out of the player, but it comes a little bit repetitive at the time. Like, for example, just trying to get on some platforms is a complete task in and of itself. The platforming outside of the controls really isn't the strongest. Not to mention, it just feels like you're kind of stuck in a box. So if you're not playing with any real life person, you're playing with AI bots, and every time they go around you, they form this kind of like circular shape around you to where it feels like every move you make, they're going to make right behind you. And there are also some times where they won't get out of the way or are just flat out annoying. Look, I love AI in video games when it comes to teammates, when I don't have anybody over to play with, but it becomes a problem whenever they're more of a liability than an asset. Not to mention, they can become completely and utterly useless when it comes to helping battle different enemies. Like, for example, you literally just seen how they'll go up to the enemy and just punch it while also getting attacked at the same time. And if everybody dies at once, the game is over. You're screwed. So not only are you battling various enemies throughout the game, you're also battling your own teammates, and that's pretty freaking aggravating. But again, it's not enough to where it's really an issue. It's just, it gets a little annoying at times. But overall, I'd say it really isn't as terrible as I'm making it sound to be, but it's a problem. And this last issue I have is kind of hard to explain. It just, for some reason, it kind of feels like you're in a box. Like the game is trying to go against you at times. It feels like every area is closed off. You can't go in certain directions. And I hate the areas whenever you're going just left or right. And what I mean by that is it's not really more free roaming when it happens like that. And there are a lot of different parts of this game that demonstrates that. And it's just kind of annoying. It just feels like you're in a closed off environment that you just can't expand. You can't go here, you can't go there. And it just feels like, I don't know, the camera system just hardly ever works. It is usually going against you instead of where you actually want it to go. And when you need it to go somewhere, it'll have a little camera cannot go there icon, basically saying, hey buddy, you can't look that way, even though you need to look that way. And you mix that sometimes with the no music in the background, and the game just kind of feels lifeless, honestly, at times. But overall, I could say it's a very enjoyable game. But if I had to say, I really would think that the good outweighs the bad in this game. This is honestly just a very enjoyable video game. It's the first that we really got all Nicktoons characters combined for a story-based game that follows along very closely to the TV shows that they all represent, and I think it's done in a really, really good fashion. Not only that, these are the 4 most popular Nickelodeon characters at the time. This released in 2005, so obviously these 4 characters were at the peak of their history. So it was very nice to see every single one of them coming in to a video game where they all have to join together to stop forces from their own villains from each and every story. So I would really have to give this game an A ranking, and I say that because not only did I grow up playing this that I feel nostalgia, I think it's a very well put together game. It's fun, it's kid friendly, nothing wrong with it, has good voice acting, decent soundtrack, not the best, but I really do enjoy this game, so I'm going to give it an A ranking. But like I said, this game was the game that kicked off a Nicktoons Unite somewhat franchise, and we have 3 more other games to cover. And the next one I'd say is a pretty solid one too. This next one is called Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island. This game actually follows various Nicktoons characters as they are on, for some reason, some kind of island that's named Volcano Island, and they all join forces to try to stop the evil goers that go on this island. Now, look, this game is wildly different from Nicktoons Unite. Despite there only being a year gap between these two games, it follows a completely different storyline with a whole new set of characters, and it's not 4-player. That's one of the biggest differences. And it also has 2 main characters instead of 4. Your 2 main characters in this game is SpongeBob and Danny Phantom, which I think is a very, very solid duo in and of itself, as they were summoned to this volcano island by this cute little crab guy in order to help them stop the evil forces that were going to try to take over the island. The main leader or villain of this thing is this Magu, and apparently he broke out of prison and attempts to take over the island, so these crabs were able to summon all the Nicktoons characters to come together and for some reason try to stop them. Yeah, I don't know why Nicktoons characters were this guy's best bet to save his island, but hey, what the hell do I know? I'm just a YouTuber, not a video game developer. Danny and SpongeBob are the first 2 characters were introduced throughout the game. Obviously, they are the 2 main characters, but as it turns out, almost every single Nicktoons character at the time of 2006 was brought on the island, and these are just the first 2 that were introduced to. We do eventually find a majority of the other characters on the island as we progress throughout the game, and while not every single character we're introduced to is a frontline runner for their own TV show, you are going to see a lot of side characters like Patrick or Squidward. You know, the list goes on. Now, unfortunately, we are unable to play as every single character throughout this game. For example, Squidward, which not sure why you'd involve them in the game if you can't even play as them, but again, what the hell do I know? So now the question comes up is, how is this one wildly different from Nicktoons Unite? Well, Nicktoons Unite was absolutely a free roaming game, but like I said, it kind of felt like you were trapped within each level in the environment that you were playing in. Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island completely revokes that and makes it actual free roaming. Like, just look what's happening right here. We're running around different patterns just to get to the center of the island. You have different paths that obviously aren't going to take you where you want to go, but it's still very fun to explore and adventure around that. We didn't get that in Nicktoons Unite. You were trapped. Every single mission, you had to go from point A to point B. There was nothing else to explore. It really wasn't as creative as this one was, and it just felt like you were more trapped. The graphics and the designs for this game are very, very similar to Nicktoons Unite, as the production quality of 2006, really, this is the best as it's going to get, and I'm not complaining about this whatsoever, but it is very similar to that game. I'd say really the only downgrade from this one compared to the previous one is that each character doesn't necessarily bring their own asset to the game. They just kind of all follow the same pattern of combat and just basic knowledge. There really isn't anything too special about them. Obviously, it's nice playing as various different Nicktoons characters, but in Nicktoons Unite, each character had their own special ability that was required to move forward in some of the levels. This one, you just move forward. That's it. You can play as whoever the hell you want to play as, and it's not going to make a difference. Now, does that take out the fun from the game? Absolutely not. Not every single game needs to have characters with special abilities in order for you to enjoy it, and this game is definitely one of them. They're very lucky that this is an enjoyable game, or that would be a very lazy developing part on their end, which it still kind of is. Another part of the game that I really don't understand is why this isn't 4 players. As you can see on the screen, there are 4 characters running around on the screen, yet you can only play up to 2 players at a time, which That's the part that I really don't understand. And I mean, if you could even call that a downgrade, because I mean, the actuality of somebody having 4 people to play all at once is pretty rare unless you're throwing some kind of a party. But I just find it kind of odd that the game decided to go down that level. Maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit too much, because this game honestly is a banger regardless of the very small things that I'm complaining about. So we got all these Nicktoons characters here on this island, and they're doing, they're good Samaritans. So what is the story around this game? Basically nothing. Everything that I told you earlier is the story. Everything kind of unravels on its own as each character is introduced. So we do have a pretty cool end boss fight, which the boss fights in this game really aren't that bad, but there really isn't any story based around this game. That's the one thing I'd say is really a negative compared to Nicktoons Unite. There's just no story. There is a point to the game, don't get me wrong, and exploring the island is actually incredibly fun, but it just kind of feels a little pointless in the end, because it's like, what are we doing this for? I know we're here to save the island, and obviously we don't need to have a very complex story for a Nicktoons battle game, but I don't know, it just kind of feels like lazy on the writer's part. So what exactly does this game really have to offer you? Well, it's a very fun game with Nicktoons characters running around the island doing very wacky stuff with their very wacky attacks, cartoon characters. It's a really fun game. I did grow up playing this one, and the feel for nostalgia is definitely through the roof playing this game once again, and it just makes me love the game even more. I will say that I do think that this is an upgraded version compared to Nicktoons Unite. Even though that has a more story-based game, you are a lot more free in this game, and it just feels a lot more fun than the other one. Not to mention, it feels more like a cartoon. The other one, while it did have cartoon concepts and obviously cartoon characters, felt like a trap more than a kid's action game. Not to mention, the environments and the levels are a lot more beautiful and colorful compared to the other ones, which just kind of felt bland. The backgrounds for the other ones felt like just storyboard concepts. It didn't feel like an actual video game. This one is gorgeous. The island is gorgeous. The levels are gorgeous. The objects, everything about this game is just absolutely gorgeous. You could tell they really put in a lot more time and effort when it came to designing the levels, the character models, and just everything about this game. Now, obviously, growing up, you're not really paying too much attention to that. The main thing that you want in a video game is to have fun, and I really do think that this game doesn't restrict you from basically anything, whether it's combats or different areas to go around. I think this game does a really good job of all that and just making sure that you have a blast. And it doesn't really need a good story. It doesn't really need good, development or anything like that. It's just a really good game. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to say this, people. Y'all got to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to give Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island in S tier. Yep. Spoiler, best game of this list. Easily best game of this video. And if you don't believe me, try it out for yourself. And you're welcome to have your own opinion. If you don't enjoy this game, hey, more power to you, man. I hope there's another game in this video that you find that's actually better than this one, because I think this is the best one in there. Now, unfortunately, from here, it kind of goes downhill from the remainder of the Nicktoons games. It really just kind of feels like they ran out of ideas, and Battle for Volcano Island was the last good one that they had. This next Nicktoons game is called Nicktoons Attack of the Toy Bots, and if the concept itself sounds a little silly, it's because it is. The game in and of itself, for some reason, doesn't take itself very seriously, and one thing that Battle for Volcano Island lacked was a pretty decent story. Well, this game does not add on anything whatsoever to that concept. This game is basically based off of like some random game show that we're never really fully explained to, was just thrown right into, and Professor Calamitous, from Jimmy Neutron, is on the show and conducts this kind of plan to make some toy bots, but the way that he does it is incredibly weird. He gets the fairies from the Fairly Odd Parents, and apparently when you feed them Krabby Patties, it makes them fart and turns their magic fart dust into like something that'll fuel a robot. It's very stupid, and the game doesn't even take itself seriously in terms of that concept. And it lacks a lot. Like, there's stuff that happens in this game that has little to no explanation in it. And the biggest problem with this game, I'd have to say, is the fact that it's a Nicktoons game, but for some reason, we don't really see the Nicktoons characters, interact with each other. We do get introduced to some new ones that came out much later on at the time of the game's release, but that doesn't really help anything because they're just there. You literally can name this any other game, and it would be probably a better game. But the fact that this is Nicktoons dragged into it just kind of ruins it. But I could easily say that the worst part of this game is not the storyline, it's the actual game itself. This game, for some reason, bases itself solely on a platform game, which is something that we're not used to or have not been introduced in the other two Nicktoons games. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why are we trying to change things up in a style that not a lot of people are going to like? And one good asset to the other two games was the fact that there was some sort of combat system in here. There's none in here. You literally just shoot enemies with these random little guns that you find. You don't fight anybody. It's just shooting them. And then you don't even have to fight the enemies. You can walk right past them and have absolutely no problem. They're not going to affect you whatsoever. Like, look at this. The other two Nicktoons games had a much more open and wide environment, and you were able to free roam and do whatever you wanted, essentially. In this game, you're forced to go in the general direction of where they want you to go, and if you don't, you're not going to succeed at the game. Now, I know what you could be saying. It did somewhat do the same thing in Volcano Island, and I could agree with you on that, but the problem is, it's fucking platforming. That's not fun. Like, what's the point of that? Why would you completely change something that the first two games introduced? I get it, this game is trying to be different because they're trying to make every single Nicktoons game a separate entity and don't want to be another predecessor compared to the next one, but whenever you're going to completely try to reinvent the wheel and try something outrageously different that's just going to make the game completely unlikable and unfun, you can't expect it to have a good outcome in this game. One big thing, like I mentioned in Volcano Island, that kind of sucked was the fact that they didn't have any story, and they also didn't have any like special power-ups for specific characters. And the reason why that worked in that game was because it was genuinely a good game. The poor, storyline made up for the fact that it was a great game. This game has nothing to offer. It has a poor storyline, it has literally horrible game mechanics, and it does nothing to help you out in this game. Not to mention, you used to have AI that would be semi-useful. In this one, they're completely unuseful. They literally just follow you. Like, look, I'm over here about to get my ass kicked, and he's just sitting there, getting his ass kicked too. What's the point of even having AI if it's going to do nothing? If I were to find a redeeming factor of this game, I'd have to say is that the cutscenes, I think, are pretty well put together. And they also got all the original voice actors back again, yet for another game, even some of the newer characters. And that is pretty solid. Even though the story doesn't make a lot of sense, it definitely feels like a Nicktoons game once they're interacting with each other. The problem is, they don't interact with each other very much. It's literally, majority of it is that weird game show that we're never introduced to, and it's also basically Calamator's plan, which already doesn't make sense of its own, and the majority of it is just the Nicktoons characters reacting to it, not actually talking to him, not actually talking to the enemies or anything like that, just be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible, we gotta save the world, just stupid shit like that. Like, there was no effort put into the story whatsoever, but like I said, the cutscenes are decent. But sadly, in the end, cutscenes just aren't enough to save a game. I'm not here to watch the cutscenes, I'm here to have a good time, and this game just really doesn't bring you a good time. Even at the completion of this game, you just felt like this could have been, I don't know, so much more. I mean, the toy bots sound like a great idea, honestly. I mean, it's so badass looking toy bots, but it's just played out so poorly, and I mean, the gameplay is so terrible, it's unbearable to the point where you don't really even want to play it. I was literally playing this game just to get to the cutscene, so something interesting would happen, and it wasn't bad, but overall, I would just avoid this game. So when it comes to rankings, I'm gonna give this game a D ranking. I would avoid this game. It's not that fun. It has some decent concepts to it. It has its moments, but overall, just not a good game. But this game, despite being what feels like a colossal failure, couldn't have been that bad, as we ended up getting one more Nicktoons Unite game. This time around, it didn't have Nicktoons in the name, rather it was SpongeBob SquarePants and Nicktoons in Globs of Doom. Now, if you're wondering as to why that has such a wacky name, it's probably because they were trying to cash in on the fact that SpongeBob was really the only show that was still in its prime and still had some pretty good numbers. Seriously, every other character in this show either had their show canceled or was on its way to get canceled. This game released in 2008. Danny Phantom got canceled in 2007, Jimmy Neutron got canceled in 2006, and just a year after the game's release, Tax Show got canceled in 2009. So there really wasn't a lot to stand on when it came came to naming this game. You really couldn't call it Nicktoons anymore because, well, all the other Nicktoons were pretty much just done at this point. So it makes sense to have SpongeBob in the main title and have with Nicktoons on the side because the majority of these characters weren't even running at this point in time, and it was good to put them on the side. Right off the bat, though, we are introduced to pretty much all of the main characters, which actually consists of the mainline Nicktoons characters and their villains, which I think was a very interesting choice for the game. But hey, you know what? If it works, it works. Oh yeah, and that crab from Battle for Volcano Island is also present in here too. Basically, the premise of this story is that there's these weird globs coming down amongst everybody's universe. What a shocker, again, and they're taking over everybody via mind control. And this affects everybody, including the villains, which is basically why they want to join forces with the Nicktoons just for this one time only, so they could get rid of this threat that could be pretty much taken out of the entire planet, including them. Now, in terms of a mainline villain, if you're looking for a backstory, you're going to be, well, a little disappointed. The story... Well, also the story doesn't have a lot of backstory either, but you know what? At this point in time, we just got to get used to that. These are Nicktoons games. They're designed for kids. They're not designed for adults, so they're not going to have the best storyline. Whenever I'm this young, I'm not looking for a story. I'm not looking for any of that. I'm literally just looking for the gameplay and the game mechanics, and I got to say, it's a lot better in this one. So for some reason, this game just feels really, like, fresh. For it being released in 2008, this is freaking amazing. Now, unfortunately, the combat mechanics are still somewhat lacking in this game. You primarily are just going to use this weird little laser gun that you have, but there can use combat like what you're seeing over here. Whenever you get really close to the enemies, you can attack them, punch them, kick them, whatever you want to say. Outside of that, I think it's a pretty well done, put together game. You don't really get to pick the Nicktoons characters that you want to play as. However, it does keep you focused not only with some really good gameplay mechanics, that's kind of a call into some of the earlier Nicktoons games, primarily Battle for Volcano Island for me, and the biggest thing they fixed in this game compared to the other one, it's not a platforming game. Obviously, it's not as much free roaming as previous games were, but I will say this is a very big step up compared to Attack of the Toy Bots. Like, seriously, look at this beautiful environment that we're walking around. This beautiful environment, this beautiful everything, yeah, this was not present in Attack of the Toy Box, so this is absolutely a breath of fresh air. I truly do enjoy this game, and I think it's one of the best ones in the series. Obviously, it's not as good as Volcano Island, but I really do think it's high up there. The only problems I would have with this is that it doesn't really take itself too seriously. And I know that kind of sounds a little hypocritical talking about a Nicktoons game not taking itself seriously, but we don't even know what these things are that's attacking us. Obviously, they're globs of doom, but it's like, where do these things come from? What's the point of them? What are they here to do? None of that is really explained. Even in the ending, whenever you get to see the main villain of the game, which you almost have to wait to the very end to notice, even his backstory just doesn't make a lot of sense. And then what's even worse is they try to paint him off as like a misunderstood character that doesn't even want to be a villain. Like, I don't want that cheesy concept. No, give me somebody that's ruthless. Give me somebody that's doing what they're doing because they want to take over the world, dude. They want to bathe in blood. Don't give me someone that's like, well, I did this because I thought I could do this and that. I'm so sorry. No, because that's not the concept the other three games had. So why change that now? But if we're going to be honest, if that's the least of our worries, I think this is a pretty successful game. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, it truly is. It got a lot better reviews compared to the last game, and it was really all around well liked, whether it's the voice acting, the cutscenes, the gameplay, the attack, the mechanics, just, dude, everything about this game was really, really nice. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rank this game as an A tier. Yep, that's right. It's a big step up compared to the last game. I know I keep talking about it, and I know it's living rent-free in my head, but that game was just terrible. I can even honestly say, growing up right now, if I were to sit down and actually play this game, I probably would have a genuine good time playing it. Obviously, a callback to my childhood, but this is really not a very bad game whatsoever, and of course, just like the other ones, it's multiplayer, so if you want to play with a friend, you're more than welcome to do that, which is really, really freaking awesome. Now, unfortunately, for some reason, this is the last game under the Nicktoons Unite category, where all the Nicktoons characters band together to take over some greater villain. I'm not sure why it got canceled. The only thing that I can assume would honestly be the fact that, like I said, a majority of these characters were starting to die out, their shows were getting canceled, and they really didn't have a reason to bring any of them back. After this game released, you didn't have a lot of good cartoons on Nickelodeon, as they pretty much went towards live action with iCarly, Charlie, Victorious, Drake and Josh, etc. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up for you to decide, but I can honestly say that since this was the last Nicktoons Unite game, that it did end on a pretty positive note, and I think this game is very well put together. This would have ended with Attack of the Toy Bots. I'd be pretty pissed off right now because that would have been a very bittersweet ending. However, this was not the very last Nicktoons game ever released, as we had another one, but with baseball. Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you, this game kind of felt like a last-ditch effort to just make a Nicktoons game in general, and even me, somebody that loves sports and absolutely is a diehard baseball fan, finds this concept a little wonky, and I can't lie to you, I obviously played this game growing up a whole lot, but having real MLB players take on Nicktoons characters sounds like a pretty interesting concept, except for the fact that you could clearly tell that they put all their effort into the Nicktoons characters, and the Major League characters don't even look freaking real. Now, I will say you could choose from some of your favorite Nicktoons cartoons, including new ones from Tough Puppy and Fanboy and Chum Chum, but this goes all the way back down to even Avatar: The Last Airbender, which we had not seen in a previous Nicktoons game. Basically, the premise of this game is you set up your very own Nicktoons team, which can consist of any kind of cartoon that you want, and you can also assemble an MLB roster to go up against. Now, I can say the developers did some research in terms of what MLB teams are, how the game of baseball actually works, some of the players, but outside of that, this is just, I don't know, something about this game just seems incredibly off. First of all, it looks like an unfinished product. The graphic designs for the characters just, for some reason, look incomplete. And if I was saying that about the Nicktoons characters, you know I'm going to be saying that about the MLB players because they are 10 times worse. The Nicktoons characters look semi-done, but the other ones, they developed it in just a couple of days and said, you know what, screw it, we got a deadline, just throw this crap out there. We'll just put automatic game designs and models from previous games. Now, of course, it does require you to have some kind of basic knowledge of the sport of baseball, which, I mean, a majority of kids do have that knowledge, but if you didn't, I don't understand why I'd be buying a Nicktoons MLB game, but whatever. And the pretty unique concept is that you could build your own Nicktoons team of players to go up against a Major League roster, and not gonna lie, that does sound very intriguing, and that's definitely what caught my attention. Not to mention these beautiful fields that you could play in. You can either play as up to 6 different Nicktoons fields, or you can play as some of the more popular MLB fields, which, not gonna lie to y'all, that's pretty freaking gutted out. And I mean, this game, it's not gonna lie, it's a banger. I ain't gonna lie to you, it's a banger. Now, that's just the baseball fan of me saying that. I can admit that it's a very, very weird design. It feels like they went down the road as Nicktoons Movin, as they're trying something different and creative, and I think for the most part it worked out, but we can't be saying that with everything that we have because this was the very last Nicktoons game to exist, so it really couldn't have succeeded that much. They had a Nintendo Wii version, an Xbox 360 version, and a DS version. Now, me personally, I played it on the 360, which sounds pretty stupid, honestly, because with the Wii, you can actually hold the remote and actually swing it like you're playing baseball, but I chose the 360 version because I really wasn't that bright. I have not played the DS version, but I can't imagine that's too much fun, but whatever. The Xbox version is obviously an HD remastered version of the Wii because the Wii doesn't have the same components or is not as powerful as an Xbox 360, so I did like that. However, if you do want to experience the actual fun of this game, I highly recommend that you play this game on the Nintendo Wii, as it actually feels like you're playing baseball. The mechanics are very basic and straightforward. You're literally just playing the game of baseball. You hit the ball, you get a base hit, you hit a home run, you score a run, you could steal, you could catch, you could pitch. The basic mechanics of a baseball game. There really isn't too much to talk about in this game because, well, there's not a lot of source material to talk about outside of the fact that it's Nicktoons characters going up against Major League Baseball characters, which, love the concept, love the idea, and I love the game. But not everybody's going to love this game, and I totally understand that. Not everybody is into sports, and the majority of kids that are watching cartoons are watching it because they don't want to play sports. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I loved it, but that's because I love sports. So I know this one was a little bit shorter, but I'm going to give this a B tier ranking, and only because I do love the sport of baseball. Maybe it could have a little bit of fixes, but whatever. Wow, this was a very, very long game, and of course, the end result was Battle for Volcano Island being the best Nicktoons game out there, with the runner-up coming, of course, to Nicktoons Globs of Doom. These were amazing games, and I grew up playing every single one of them, and I felt nostalgia playing every single one of these games and bringing that back to YouTube to this day, so I really enjoyed that. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If y'all enjoyed this, make sure to smash that like button, consider subscribing, turning on notifications so you never miss an upload. I do appreciate every single one of you. I know I took a little break, a little hiatus for a couple of months, but I am back. I do have some other video ideas coming up, so for the ones that stuck around, thank you so much. We just hit over 10,000 subscribers, and I could not be more appreciative and thankful for all you guys out there. Thank you so much for just letting me live out one of my dreams. So I love you guys to death, and I'll see you on the next one.